What's up, guys? Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over advanced health bars. So not specifically health states or anything like that. That's all something we are preparing for now. But before we get into that, I kind of want to have a feeling of how we want our things to look. You can see I've updated some of the buttons, made some of the things look better in the menus. And that's very simple. That's just me changing out a lot of the assets and different things like that with other ones that I made. Alright, so as we enter the game here, you'll see all the mechanics are still in place, but you can see I have different health bars now. Now they're a little jaggedy because I am in no way an artist, so I made this as a shape in PowerPoint and transferred it over. But you can see that all the progress bars still work, but I'm now using this custom progress bar for both the health bar and the super meter that I made. So I have these two progress bars. You can see they're different colors now. So the super meter is all one color, which is intentional. It'll probably remain that way. We'll probably add some fancy stuff. You know, when I think of super meters in a lot of fighting games, they've got a lot going on. But the health bars are usually pretty simple. They do often change colors or have the ability to have different colors within them. And I also wanted to change, I changed the sizing of the HUD and different things like that. So you should see it looks quite a bit different than it has in the past, but I think you will like it. Regardless, we're going to cover today changing progress bars to use custom images that we create. Because sure, while mine aren't the fanciest, you could make yours a lot fancier. You can also use any image you want. It doesn't even have to be a bar, really. You just need two images, and you can fill one up with the given color. I'm going to show you how to change different things about the style of the progress bars, because that's unrelated to the image. The color is a different thing. And different things like that. So it's basically going to be an all-around just updating the HUD and giving you more freedom over your progress bars and your other things that you can play around with. So we're not going to be using any of the code today, so you can feel free to just stick with the Unreal Engine. However, if you do want to catch up on anything we've done, I believe this is episode 78 or 79, so we've done a lot of fighting game episodes. We've got all sorts of other tutorials. If you want to check them out, I'll leave a link to the fighting game playlist and then also to just the general programming playlist if you want to check out everything that we've done. Otherwise, let's get started. So first things first, let's go ahead and update our progress bars to have different colors in them. So in the HUD here, in the design view, they'll still look like whatever they looked like before, because we're going to change their actual binding, their appearance binding here, as opposed to just changing their color in the space here. These colors are just here to kind of demonstrate what an empty and a full bar looks like. So I could change the color now, but basically my point is the color you make it on the design view doesn't matter, as you probably realized. However, we've never changed the bar before. We made the bar red and we left it alone. However, we're actually going to bind our colors now. So to do this, you just click on a progress bar that you want, such as my P1 health bar. And we'll skip this stuff. This is inserting a new image. You go past progress and go to appearance, fill color and opacity, and this will say bind. Like if you have a new progress bar, I'll show you really quickly. Then you'll have the color, which is what we were using before, and bind. Hit bind and create binding. I've already created two, so I'm not going to go and do that. I'm going to delete that one that I added. And once you create it, it will automatically bring you here, but you can also find it in your function list. So here are my two. Get P1 health bar, fill color and opacity, and get P2. You only need one, really, but I prefer having two and just grabbing the appropriate character. That way, these are very simple, and whatever I want to do with them is covered. We don't have to add a bunch of functionality to focus on every single time, or if we want to change the game mode to where there's only one character for whatever reason, or there's no health bars. You know, you don't have all these extra things that you have to take care of. But the binding itself is very simple. It has the start node here, and it has this return node. Since this is a binding, you don't call it. It pretty much just gets updated all the time on its own through a tick function, and it's unrelated to anything we have to do. So this automatically happens, and again, it automatically has this return node. This return node takes in a linear color structure And what we can do is either set this value manually, or we can lerp to get a certain value. So you might have noticed when I was playing that the bar actually went from green to yellow as I was taking hits. It was becoming more of like this orangish color. It started out as this vibrant green and became more of this as time went on. This is a pretty popular fighting game mechanic. It shows up in quite a few games where the bar's color actually changes as you get closer to death or losing that round, whatever the circumstances are. So it's very simple. We get our game mode reference. If you haven't been following the series, that's perfectly fine. The game mode reference is basically in event construct of this widget. I get the default game mode BP and I set the game mode reference. I don't even really have to do this. Wherever you spawn it from, like I spawn it in my game mode BP, so I could just drag off and set game mode reference in there, but it doesn't really matter. All that matters is you get your game mode reference, and if you have your players assigned in there, like I do, you can grab player 1 and player 2. The rest of it is all going to be stuff that's within the character themselves, so you will need these things even if you're not watching the series to determine it. But we're going to need a player health and a max player health. It's very simple. Max health is something I set up in the previous health bar episode. And it's very, very simple, so we can show you now. It is a float, which is going to take me probably quite a bit of time to find it here with how many things we've got going on now. Max health right here, and player health right here. Here are the two variables that I have. I've already added these in the series, so I won't cover everything that they're used for, but max health is essentially the maximum health that a player can have. Since players can have different health, this is important to be able to set this. And then player health is the amount of health that the character actually has. So if they take damage, they lose health. They're no longer at max health, but we still want to maintain what the max health value is. So we just go ahead and we have these two variables, and that's all we need. Again, we don't have to change anything in the code today. If you're new to this series, you might want to add those things, but it's very simple. We're going to do something called lerp, which I've talked about before, but it's linear interpolation. It essentially will go from A to B with this alpha. I did it a little bit backwards, to be honest. I should have probably gone from green to yellow at the inverse alpha, but it's okay. Essentially, I'm grabbing the player health that we have, dividing by max health. So this is float divided by float. Using that as the alpha, and then I'm lerping between these two colors. And the way this works is if you already have these two things in here, your game mode reference and your variable like player 1. In fact, let me show you that since I showed you everything else. My player 1 and player 2 variables are just pointers to my characters. Again, if you've been following the series, you'll have these. No need to add them. I'm just reminding you what they are. All I do is I drag off of my player reference and I grab the appropriate variables. So I grab player health, get player health, and get max health. Very simple. I divide them by each other. So you can do just this slash to do float divided by float. You can actually type out divide, but either way, float divided by float. And then we're going to do lerp on linear color. So when you type lerp, there's a lot of things you can lerp between. In this case, we want a color. So lerp linear color. And then you can manually pick your colors by double-clicking the box. In fact, I think you only have to single-click it. Only single-click the box. And you can choose the color manually. You can actually put in hex values, RGB values, change the transparency of it. If you do want to use my exact values, I'll give them to you. So this is what my yellow, orange, basically out of health state looks like. So you can copy those values if you want. And my green are these values. This is my full health in perfect condition color. And lerp is going to go from one to the other. So it's actually going to be, it's going to be a lot of colors in between. But if you have these two as your points, your A and your B, then you'll have the same colors I do. Alpha is the result from this. Essentially, again, how it works is alpha is a value of 0 to 1. It's a ratio. So if you have an alpha of 0, it takes 100% of the first value, which is A. I know it's getting a little bit cut off there where the screen is, but essentially what it's saying is If alpha is 0, it takes 100% of the first color. If alpha is 1, it takes 100% of the second color. And then, of course, 0.5 of alpha would be 50% of this color, 50% of this color right in the middle. It's going to blend them together. So that's very simple. And then so you can do a nice little color change function for your health bar. You can also just set a different color in here if you just want a specific color. You don't have to do this. And then for get health bar fill color and opacity 2, you can technically use the same one like I said, or just do what I did, create a new binding for the second health bar and put the data in here. It's the exact same stuff I used, except I set player 2, or I was grabbing player 2 instead of grabbing player 1. All right. And that's honestly most of the logic out of the way. A lot of this stuff is just some design things we can do. So there's nothing else we need in the event graph. We're going to stick in the designer. Okay, so if we go to our images, I made a HUD. And it makes these windows huge. So I have to manually grab them. There we go. Actually, let me grab all of them while we're here. All right. So I went to where I put my images and I imported these. Images are incredibly simple to import. You can hit import and select an image and it will just do it without asking any questions, or you can literally drag it into your file structure on your computer and it will get the images in here. So it's very simple, not complicated at all. But once you're in here, I have 4 images. I have an image for the health bar that is not full, an image for the health bar that is full, an image for the super meter that is not full, and an image for the super meter that is full. So notice the difference here. First of all, these are all PNGs, portable network graphics. So you want your file name here to be .png, because if it is, it supports transparency. That's really important. If it's not a PNG, it can't be transparent and things could go wrong with this. There are technically still ways to make it work, but they won't be supported with this method that we're using. So make sure you have PNG, make sure you have this checkerboard background automatically when you open the image in Unreal like this. Okay. And then I have the exact same image, but with a white fill. Again, I use shapes in PowerPoint because I don't have a lot of artistic ability. So what I did was I made a shape in PowerPoint. You can do it in Paint, you can do it wherever. And I saved it out as an image, as a PNG. So I have one without color in the background and one with color. You probably want to choose white as the color because it'll fill whatever this color is that it finds was missing in the other one. Like that's how it can determine. It says this one has no color, so this is the background. This one has color, so this is what we're filling. So it will work if you don't use white in the background here, but it will be a different color. So if you put gray in, for example, and the fill color is green, it's going to be a darker green than the green you're providing it with in the binding. So just fill it in with white for the easiest solution. Same with the super meter. This is the same image. I have no fill here. You can see the checkerboard. And then I have white here in the background. And thus this is the area, the region that will be filled. Now you're probably going to want to go and set all these texture groups to be UI. So every image you have, go to level of detail, texture group, set to be UI. It's set on world by default, so you're going to want to change it. All right, and that's pretty simple. All we have to do now is set this up in our actual HUD to change out the look of it. So in the progress bar itself, you have this thing called style, which for me is always shut by default. I don't know if that is for everyone or what, but if it's shut, just open it up. And then you'll have something that looks like this: background image, fill image, and marquee image. We're not going to deal with the marquee image today, although we will be covering different things that we can do with that. But specifically for the background image and the fill image, all we're going to do is put in, the background image is going to be the one with the transparent fill. So this one. The fill image is going to be the one with the color in the background. So that one. And you have this image section, which is empty by default. Unreal is a default image it uses. So you just search for your asset. If you imported it properly, you should be able to find it easily. So I was calling them like health bar for variation in case I want to have different health bars. And I put the one that's not filled as the background. Whoops. You can leave it as draw as box, but you want to set your margins to be 0 in this case. If you don't, then there's going to be some additional things that could break. Like, for example, the default value is 0.25. And you don't notice it, you don't actually see it here. But sometimes, and under certain circumstances, you can see what this actually looks like with that margin. It depends on kind of how your images are set up, what they look like, where it's at, if you stretched it in the HUD. So I don't know the exact reasoning why or when it'll happen, but usually setting it to 0 is the standard method. You just do that and you just use the image instead and stretch the image, and you don't have to worry about any of that other junk. Then, very simple at this point, fill image, you use the filled bar, you set the margins to be 0, and you're good to go. Now you should see this working. All right, and then let's cover the super meter bar, even though it's very similar. In fact, it's exactly the same, but I'll just show you what I've done so you can see it. In style, background image, I have the empty super meter, 0 margin. And for the fill image, I have the filled super meter and with 0 margin. These are actually bound to the same percent binding that they were in the past. I did not change their fill color and opacity. I kept the same blue. So if you want to change that now, that's up to you. We'll be doing much more with the super meter in the future. If you want to change these progress bars, like player 2's, I know it's a little dark right now because I didn't fill it in. I can make this a 1.0 by default to show you. I like to keep them empty so I can see what it looks like on both, but in this case, it's good to see what they look like full on both. Okay, so you could simply have another image if you wanted, and just flip it and save it and use that. However, that's really a lot more complicated than it needs to be. If you click on your progress bar, you fill out all the same stuff, right? Image, 0 margins. Image, 0 margins. Same stuff for everything. However, the important part happens here, where we need to flip these, but we still want them to be filling up the proper way. If they fill up the wrong way, you can flip the image all you want. It won't help you. The way that we can handle this very easily without changing the actual bar fill type, which you could also do that, it's not a problem. But if we want them to act the same regardless of side, then all we need to do is switch the X scale, or the size X in this case. So for me, my progress bar is 712 as the size I chose. So for the opposite side, if I make it negative 712, it inverts itself and goes the other way. Same with the super meter. My super meter is 680. My player 2 super meter is negative 680. Now, if you already had these in place and didn't have a negative scale, or excuse me, a negative size, you are going to have to move them, but that's also very simple. If you want them to be on the same spot in the HUD, that way it's on the exact same pixels and size and all that so that they're symmetrical. All you do is look at where your position is. My position is 156. And then you also add a negative to that value, negative 156. So it's the same position away from the edge, and it's also the same size, which means they are symmetrical. And it's the same with this. One more time. 28 for the position, negative 28 for this position. There you go. Now, this is unrelated to this episode, but for those of you that are watching the series, I did add size boxes and scale boxes to this. This way it scales properly. And you guys probably saw that during the Anchor episode, so I won't cover that. But I did move these scale boxes and size boxes to a lot of the other pages as well, the widgets, because it is very useful to have them. So I decided to stop being lazy, and I put them on the character select. And I put them on the level select. The logic otherwise is functionally the same. I did make a few changes to the buttons, which were just changing the style on normal. So that's all I did. I did that for all the buttons on the character select and level select and the main menu. I also did add these blue buttons, which is if you're selecting this option currently. So as opposed to using the ugly hover I did, the hover was good, but it was used for the character select, level select. It didn't fit here. So I switched it over. I made a blue version of the button. So I have this shape that I made in PowerPoint again. I filled it in with a gray background, and I saved it out as an image. Then I saved out separate images for blue and orange. Orange would be for player 2 if we want to have them menu control on any of these buttons. Otherwise, I have this blue. All I'm doing is switching out the images that I was using in the past. I didn't change any functionality, but I wanted to let you guys know. I like to keep you guys updated. So there we go, guys. Now we can play our game, and we can update our HUD. You can start making very nice images for your progress bars if you'd like. Up to you if you really want to or not. And yeah, in one of the future episodes here, we will be getting into actually adding more stuff to the progress bar. Like, it looks good how it is, and you can see how the color changes as I lose health here. So, you know, I'm very, very critical as I get to the orange spot there. You can see how much nicer it can make it look to have these, you know, these different things with their progress bars. But there's still some of the flair missing. You know, a lot of times there's a little shader or material you'll have that will go around the outside of the progress bar, or maybe some flames coming out like energy from the super meter, different things like that. So anyway, I think that's all I got for you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It does more for the channel than anything else that you can do, and I just really appreciate it, and it's free. If you need any help with this episode or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There's a link in the description. I also want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon subscribers and supporters. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do and for continuing to encourage me to make these videos. I really, really can't wait to see everything that everyone makes with this. One final note. I have been getting questions like, do you have a specific schedule for when you're releasing certain episodes, like the buffered input part 2 in this case? And I wish that I could. The problem is sometimes work is really busy. Work was very busy these last 2 weeks. So nothing wrong there. But this is why sometimes the episodes are a bit spread apart. I apologize that it is not as convenient as it could be. And trust me, I realize that. I always debate with myself, like, can I get that episode out? But I only have so much time on the weekends, so sometimes it's spread out, but I promise you that I have not forgotten about any of the episodes that I mentioned. I write them all down, and speaking of, there is a document that I'll put in the description that you can go edit and see all the planned episodes of this series, and in fact, all my other series. So anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.